Today we're going to talk about Ghostdog, and just by way of background, my first co-founder out of the military was Sean Lane, and the company was called BTS. And I left the Army in my 17th year, so a lot of people know me as the guy who left in the 17th year, didn't do the full 20 years. And what I usually say is, that's because I'm a quitter. I'm a quitter. And, but the opportunity to work with Sean Lane, like, timing is everything. And Sean, who was a Miami of Ohio undergrad, turned Air Force officer who wanted to be an Army officer, but then as an Air Force officer served with the Army, so pretty much an Army officer. And then Sean was a superstar intelligence officer with multiple tours downrange, multiple Bronze Stars, things he did. We won't even have time to talk about it. Our first company, BTS, we put the first cellular network on a battlefield. And talk about family, my brother Dan over here, you can wave your hand, keep a low profile. Dan had a West Point roommate, Bo Peisker, at a technology called Lemco. They were deploying cellular networks like in remote locations, and we pulled together a meeting and basically said, Bo, would this work on a battlefield? He said, I think so. And then we said, Sean, could this work? And he's like, well, we'd have to build some really special software. But then Sean said yes, and so and away we went, and we built this company together. And I'm trying not to overtalk here. I know I'm violating it right now already. Thanks, Kelly. But what was interesting is that the United States Army intelligence bought the software two years later. They just wanted it. It was that good. Sean visioneered that. Alex Watson of Gretel now, he built it. I'd like to say I helped sell it, and then Chris Hoyt, closed the deal. And then Sean went to do a company called Crosschecks, later called Olive. I did Ride Scout. And we were so close with one another that we took 20% of each other's equity and we shared it with one another. That's how close we were. And that was good for both of us. But now here we are.
Here we are.
You're back. And Sean is a national treasure of this country in our intelligence community and Department of Defense. And it is so good to have you back with Ghostdog. And so tell us about Ghostdog.
Yeah, thanks.
And anything else you want to say?
Yeah, well, thanks. It's great to be here with you and all of you. It is like a family reunion in a lot of ways. I was telling Craig earlier, I had this quirk, and I've been known to have quirks, and one of them was I wanted a wicking polo of every company that I work with. And it was just this weird thing, like I would have all the same black polo, and they'd have the logo of the company that we were either invested in or helped start. And one thing that's really interesting about those logos on those shirts is that they changed. Like those companies started out with one particular vision, and they had to change and they had to adapt to become what they are. And really, if you look at a lot of very valuable companies that have been created, that has happened. Like they've decided the early vision may not hit the mark, and they've changed and evolved that company. And if you go back in time with many of the great companies, that's the story. But one thing remained the same was that leadership team, that founding team, which is the theme of Moonshots and the theme of this particular conference, the extraordinary leadership. And it goes to show you that investing in the right leaders, they'll do what they need to do to get that founder product fit. That's also as important as the product market fit. Mm-hmm. So that's interesting. So our kind of founder product fit with Ghostdog. So Bubba Fox and I founded Ghostdog. So Bubba's another long-time part of this family, and Bubba was my first boss in the Air Force. So I was a young second lieutenant, Fort Hood, Texas, and Bubba was my boss, and he was one of the first to enable me to take risks and do interesting things and come up with new ideas and implement them. I said this week at West Point that my first few startups were actually in the military. really creating these ideas and running with them and turning them into programs that end up becoming new TTPs and new doctrine that ended up becoming programs of record. So it's kind of cool to see that now. But the thing that we experienced at BTS, and one of the problems that I saw, was we didn't know what people were interested in. And I know that sounds like a simple problem, but Google has built one of the most powerful and valuable companies on the planet because they know what people are interested in. They see what you're searching. They know the search histories, and they can see search trends across the entire globe. So we know generally the interests of the users. We know generally the interests of the entire world. If you go to Google Trends and you put in iPhone and Android, you can see the spikes of searches associated with those terms and pretty much any other term. But in the intelligence community and the classified networks, we didn't have that. Nor do we even have that inside enterprises, really. And it seemed to me at the time, this was 13 years ago, when I had the idea for Query Spectre, I thought, well, if I can get all of the database logs of all the classified databases, I could see what people were querying, and I could know what units are focused on in real time. I could know that a forward unit is focused on a terrorist network or a particular target or a town, and all of these organizations that exist could push them the intelligence they need versus them having to pick up the NSTS or whatever phone they were using. The Army liked to use these DNVT things that they were awful. But to ask for help, we just didn't have time for that. But if we saw what people were interested in, we could push. So that problem is one that really stuck with me. So after Olive and I knew I wanted to get back into national security, and so did Bubba, we talked about that problem and said, we still don't know what people are interested in. Like, we don't know what forward units are interested in. We don't know what they're searching. We don't know what the commander or the J2 walked in and said, this is our new target, this hour, and we'll have a new target the next hour and a new target the next hour. The national agencies or the reach back support has no visibility into that. So things are happening without seeing it. So, and if you think about Google and what they did, they've built, again, this powerful company, but it wasn't just knowing what people were interested in. It was to deliver them ads at the right time. So it was really connecting the supply and the demand being, I have questions, I have interests, I want to know things, and the supply being, here's the product you need, here's the service you need, here's the company you need to know. And we really thought about that and said, could we do that inside an enterprise as big as DoD and the intelligence community? Could we create, for lack of a better term, an ad platform for the enterprise where you could advertise the work you've done, you could advertise the reports you've written, you could advertise yourself as an expert, and anybody who searches it would connect with that instantly. And it became what is now Ghostdog. And his thought was, look, we've replicated every single thing that the internet has done inside the classified networks and inside the enterprise. So we've replicated the browser, we've replicated many search engines, we've replicated cloud, we've replicated all the both relational and unstructured databases, the managed services. We have AWS GovCloud, we have Azure, we have Google Cloud Platform. All these things have been replicated, but the one thing that we missed and when replicating the internet were ad platforms. And the ad platforms, it's nothing to sneeze at. I mean, these are the things that generate most of the revenue for the largest tech companies on the planet. I mean, 78% of Google's revenue is advertising. And we kind of turn our nose to it when we think about the enterprise or DoD and IC, but maybe we got it wrong. And the phenomena that we're trying to fight, and anybody who's been in DoD or IC or a large company has experienced this phenomena, is there are people out there who are experts on things that you don't know exist. Like, you have no idea they are in the DoD or the IC, and if you're in a big company, you don't even know they're in your company. They may have been studying this target or this weapon system or this technology all their life. It could be their life's work, 20 years. And you have a question about it, and you don't know they exist, so you don't get the right answer. In the enterprise, that's unfortunate that's inefficient, that leads to bad decisions, to what I would say bad wisdom, which is using that knowledge to make decisions. But on the battlefield, that leads to, bombs on the wrong targets. That leads to people dying that shouldn't. That leads to extreme risk to our warfighters. So I think it's an important thing to solve, to make sure that there's no expert that exists that we don't know about, there's no capability that exists we don't know about, to make sure that any work that we've done in the past, any report, any analysis, is there when you need it. And that's really what Ghostdog became. And then the implementation of it, we were like, how in the world are we going to do this? Like, how are we going to see all the searches? Because this whole idea of going to get all the database logs is it's really a bad idea. It's a dumb idea. I mean, there are thousands of databases, Intel databases, and good luck trying to bring them all together and take all their logs. It's not going to happen. But then we had this epiphany. If we become the browser, then we can see all these searches. And the browser is the most ubiquitous weapon system in the DoD and IC. It's the most ubiquitous tool in an enterprise. It's the one every single person uses every single day, no matter what. So if you can see what you're typing into the browser, what searches, and it's not just like, the Omni box at the top where you're doing a Google search. It's also every application, every web-based application. And if you could see that, you know what people are interested in. If you know what they're interested in, we could trigger these, we call them whispers. Our word is whispers. I like that word. It's not ads. But we produce whispers for these users. And these whispers will say, hey, you just searched relativistic plystron amplifiers because you're interested in Chinese space weapons. And by the way, we have experts on that. They sit in a little room or a basement at NASIC. They sit somewhere you didn't even know existed. And we've done an entire body of work. We've spent our national treasure to work on this problem. And we've produced an enormous amount of intelligence about it. So when you need to know it, you can get it through these whispers. Need to know, I said that, and I want to talk about that for a second, if that's okay. Yeah. So we're trained in the DoD and IC to think of need to know as a very restrictive term. Like if you don't have the need to know, you don't have access to this information. And my challenge is that is part of the story. That's half of it. And yes, we do need to protect information. We need to compartmentalize. We need to make sure our secrets are safe. But on the other side of that coin is that when people need to know, they need to know. When lives are at stake, when people are on the battlefield making decisions, and we as a country have that information, but that person doesn't have it when they're making that decision, that creates extremely grave risk to people's lives and to our country. So it's convenient to say need to know is restrictive, but everyone who thinks about that should think about both sides of the coin. When people need to know, they need to know.
Can I get an amen? Wow.
So that's, we're on this mission, and we're so proud to have Moonshots led our seed. I mean, what a full circle. I mean, there's been so many full circles in our lives, and many of the full circles are sitting out here. But
I mean, I was going to do an ad, a Ghostdog ad, a whisper for you is every single investor we showed it to said yes. Like we had never seen anything like that before. So, in terms of like Sean and Bubba are on to something, which we knew, we got some validation. And so maybe tell us, so what's going on now? Where are you?
So it's, this is not my first rodeo, obviously. Mm-hmm. And when building this company, we wanted to do it differently in many ways, but also learn from all the great things that we had done in the past. And, right now we have a very small team, and that's intentional. We want to keep our engineering team. I mean, we have, primarily engineers, small until we get that product market fit, because, this sounds really great. I mean, I can sell this on stage, 1,000 different ways and to investors, but we want to make sure that we get adoption. I mean, adoption actually is if you had to put like one, say what keeps you up at night, or one really difficult part of this effort, it's adoption. And it's actually been the problem of the entire DoD and IC and enterprises, which is like, hey, here's an initiative, who's going to adopt it? here is a piece of a tool. Nobody uses it. And we think we're going to solve some of that adoption, but with our own product, we need adoption. So we're not going to, put fuel on that growth fire until we know we have product market fit, and then we're going to scale it. So we have some early customers that we're very excited about that are coming on board. In-Q-Tel is involved in some of our early work. We have some really, I don't know if I say the actual agency, but we have some really important agencies that are going to test this out in a big way, actually, with several thousand users. And we just need to observe and see if we have the right product and we have the adoption that we expect. It's going to be challenging because we're asking for a little bit of a behavior change. We're asking users who aren't used to basically running digital marketing campaigns to do that for their own products, for their own Intel reports, or their own initiatives, or their own organizations, or themselves. So we have some work to do to make sure we get the adoption, and then we can scale it really big. So right now it's small, based in Columbus, Ohio, and we're waiting for that product market fit with our first early customers.
This is a huge idea, and this is like what I would say is like very risky, very rewardy, because this is a big play to bring a new browser into defense and Intel.
Yeah, it's interesting because the thing that you talked about, like at this event and South by Southwest in general, it's based on propinquity. Like, I don't know if you know, propinquity means, by nature of you being there, you happen to be connected to something. That's how DoD, IC, and enterprises work. It's based on propinquity. The fact that you happen to be stationed somewhere and happen to know this person, happen to go to school with them, happen to be on a mission with them, that's how your network is built. That's how our information network is built. That's how our wisdom network is built. And while that is awesome, it's not good enough for the amount of data that we have. So, I'll weave it in a different way to say that those good, magical, serendipitous moments that occurred were amazing and very valuable, but serendipity is not enough when you're planning a mission or when you're making decisions about warfare. And that's what we've relied on, propinquity and serendipity. So we want to remove that and make it, a lot more scientific of how you get the information. But that was a great event. But there was a great event.
I know. I was just thinking. I was thinking about all the people that, as soon as you talk about Ghostdog, they're like, wait, what? Because it's such a big play. It's like a 0 to 1, right? In like defense and intel. And I was just thinking all.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting because you can come up with an idea or a product, and I kind of stole this from Vinod Khosla, who was an investor in my last company, and you can reduce the consequence of success, meaning if you're going to succeed, is it going to be consequential? Is it going to matter? Is it going to change an industry? Is it going to change the way people fight wars? Is it going to change the culture of our intelligence community or DoD? Those high consequence efforts have a very small likelihood of success. That's the reality. As you increase the likelihood of success, sometimes you decrease the consequence of success. So you have to be very careful with that. Like changing your vision and making it smaller so that you can increase the likelihood of success may not always be the right answer. Or satisfy a board member. That's exactly right. So keeping that vision on a large consequence of success, like what if you succeed? Does it matter? Like that's a really important question to ask. And Ghostdog is one of those network effect type of companies where if it's 10 people using it, we fail. If it's 10,000 people using it, we fail. It has to be millions using it. There are 5.3 million users of classified networks between U.S. contractors, partners, coalition, and now what we call mission partners. And if we're not hitting the orders of magnitude of millions of users, then our network is not valuable. So it is a big undertaking that's going to take at least a decade. And we know that going into it. So it's like micro speed and macro patience.
So maybe a little pivot over to leadership, and now, you've been leading, CEOing, entrepreneuring now for, really, if we go back into your days in the service, right, where you were maybe an entrepreneur, how do you feel you've evolved as a leader?
Continuously, I would say. I've had great, leaders who have coached me along the way. I tend to, I have a problem in that I love ideas, and I love technology, and I love engineering, and I've had to learn to love people, and I mean that, like, to love people, not to tolerate people, but to Love, love people. Two of the people have taught me that are sitting right here, Bubba Fox and Craig Cummings. And people, when you love them, truly, that is part of leadership. You have to love to lead. You have to love people in order to be a leader, and you have to actually love the practice of leadership to be a good one, and you have to learn constantly, and it's very humbling, and I think it's something that I'm always trying to get better at. But I think that the epiphany for me was when you really understood that love is leadership and really showing love to folks.
I love that. We got about.
I knew you would.
I know. We got about 4 minutes left.
That went fast.
Is there anything? I have more questions, but is there anything you haven't said about Ghostdog or other that you want to share with these founders or with everyone that's here?
There's so many things. I think. I think that this journey of like starting a company it's not a 2 or 3 year thing, and it was said earlier. Yeah. This is a decade undertaking. One of the things I will say is know what company you're building when you start. Not the company, not the product necessarily, but know what kind of company. Is it going to be one where it's of a consequence that changes a market, that it's big enough to matter, maybe enduring, long-lasting, that outlives you, that becomes, a staple of our economy? Or is it going to be something that you do to get a success, an early win, cash out, and move on? Both of those are fine, by the way. Like if you're going to build a small company, $20, $30 million, sell it, the world needs you, the economy needs you, we all need that. To make a decision that you're going to build a big company, as another, I'm quoting Vinod Khosla a lot, this is strange. Another one of his things is a $0 billion company. It's like you have to decide, are you going to build a $0 million company or a $0 billion company? Which one are you? And being a $0 billion company means you're setting out on a decade-plus adventure that's going to have lots of ups and downs, and you have to be ready for that because it's very different, again, than a $0 million company where maybe $20, $30 million outcome is good. It puts money in people's pockets. It's a good economic driver, but not an industry changer, not a market changer. The other thing I'll say is entrepreneurship. Now that I've, now it's been decades of being an entrepreneur and a founder, I can say it's very much a Ferris wheel. And what I mean by that is sometimes you're at the top of that Ferris wheel. And you look and you see all these other people in the cars, and they're just getting started, maybe at the very bottom. They just got on the car, and you feel like, hey, I'm on top. This feels great. Maybe you're in the middle part of that Ferris wheel. But Ferris wheels are a circle. And you may be on the top the one day, and you may be at the bottom of the Ferris wheel the next. And it's very interesting as you're building companies to realize that, because I've seen all of these companies now grow. They were at the bottom of the Ferris wheel. They're now at the top of the Ferris wheel. I'm somewhere on the other side of the Ferris wheel, working my way back up to the top of the Ferris wheel. So I don't know. It's this Ferris wheel thing that I think is super interesting and humbling, and you'll be prepared for that too as a founder. You'll ride that circle. And all of multi-time entrepreneurs who are out here know exactly what I'm talking about. When you get to the top, and then eventually you're back on stage doing a startup pitch, trying to get seed capital. It's like, wow, that is the Ferris wheel.
What a great way to end this. And I will say Kelly and I and our whole team are really honored and excited to be on that Ferris wheel with you.
Amen.
Amen.